Guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Pure Property Podcast. Obviously, I'm here with Toby today. It feels quite nice doing the intro today. I'm quite positive about it. So
yeah,
I know Toby normally does it, guys, so a little bit more refreshing, I hope.
I'll give you a bit more responsibility.
In today's episode, we are going to be talking about a hot topic that a lot of people do look into when property investing, which is generating passive income. Mm-hmm. In short, Toby, how would you define passive income through property?
How I would define passive income in general is income generated or earned with little to no labour or work involved is pretty much it. So, that's how I would describe it in short.
It's a word I think that a lot of people are... Some people are very for and some people very against, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that I feel as though...
passive income is plastered around a lot, especially within the property industry. That's one thing that is brought up quite a lot. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes the term passive income can be slightly exaggerated, where in people's heads they think completely hands off, which, look, there is some passive income which you could determine as completely hands off, but hence in my definition I said either no or little work and labour involved. But in property investing, passive income is something that's of course able to be generated and achieve, and it's one of the main benefits of property investing when done correctly. So at Track Capital, obviously, that's one of your main jobs for pretty much, I'd say 99% of your clients, is helping them generate the passive income. So in terms of what you do at Track Capital for your investors, so how would you provide them with a service to get them to achieve passive income, as it would be?
Yeah, look, in terms of, as you said, I think that the wording that you've used there, Toby, is correct in terms of there is always a little bit normally with the property side that is required, very minimal amount of work. But in terms of, I guess, when dealing with clients, a lot of the investors we deal with do want that hands-off approach. Yeah. And of course, ideally, the word passive income is something that they want to be able to have that's going to generate them income over the period of time that they're holding on to the property. Mm-hmm. As we always say, look, in the medium to long term, that is where probably we would focus as our main strategy in terms of buying properties in key locations where you can really benefit from those. So I would say, obviously, the rental income on a month-to-month basis should cover a big, large sum of that. Mm-hmm. Realistically, even with your outgoings such as service charges, say city centre apartment, your lettings fee, etc., and management fee, and then even your mortgage costs as well. So we normally would like to see anyway with most of our properties a nice margin in between your gross and your net income to make sure that, look, the property itself is going to be giving you a nice bit of income on a month-to-month basis, which essentially we would class as passive income because it's kind of hands-off in that sense. Mm-hmm. But as mentioned, look, there's going to be at times where you might need to give an hour of your month to go and check in and see something, which, look, it's not too time consuming in the sense of, if you look at the whole kind of perspective of how much work is intensified in terms of with that. So I would say, in short, that is what we kind of typically do. That's where they would essentially get that income on a month-to-month basis without having to do much work for it. They're just using their funds.
So then how do you help them not put the work in?
So in terms of that, that's where we kind of come into play with your management companies looking after the property. So they would deal directly with the tenant. Mm-hmm. So they take...
And you would source them?
So we've got the management companies that will look after whether you go down the route of short or long-term let. Yep. They'll take full care of the property. A lot of the time, we know a lot of our investors aren't always local to the properties, whether they be overseas or maybe in the south and they're investing in the north. So they need someone to kind of take care of it. And as I said, they don't want it to be too much hassle for them. So the management company takes responsibility for the tenant. So in that sense, that is typically what would happen. We source those things similar to how we would do it on a mortgage broker. We've got the mortgage brokers, solicitors, accountants, all sorts of things that clients...
Help them set up a limited company.
Exactly, all sorts of things that clients will need that we can kind of make that...
And one of the main things is finding the property. Obviously,
finding the property. So as you said there, it's kind of an end-to-end service we see it as, rather than... It can be daunting, as we all know, buying a property and not knowing contacts that are sometimes as well actually going to take good care of you, because we know with a lot of services if it's sometimes word of mouth and people have used them before, it's always a good sign. So typically, that's what we like to do, and that's why we find a lot of investors end up coming and using our services time and time and again, just purely because of the fact that we have got that, and it makes it easy for them to generate a monthly income essentially off the back of that. And look, that's not even countering in and factoring in the capital growth element, which is always quite nice as well.
Yeah, that's always nice to have in the properties and the locations that we tend to deal with. So in essence, then it's providing the service of sourcing the property and then sourcing the services for the client, vetting those services to enable them to have the passive side of it, not having to deal hands-on directly as much, like in terms of finding a letting agent.
It can be labour intensive, as we know, right?
Yeah, of course, and I think look, how can you become a property investor with a full-time job, for example? The only way you can really do that is by having an element of it being passive. Now, again, you'll see plastered all over social media, quit your full-time job, getting passive income from property and be a property multimillionaire from majority of people who probably don't even own a property themselves and aren't millionaires themselves. And to be able to do that is, very, very, very unlikely. Now, but can you invest in property alongside working full-time in a passive manner? Of course you can. And that's, again, using services such as ourselves helps that process, especially for new investors who haven't got the experience. But, even if you don't utilize companies such as ourselves, you can still do it. There'll be a little bit of upfront work. You'll be having to spend a little bit of time trying to source the services that we just mentioned that we're able to assist with, like letting agents. You're then going to have to find estate agents potentially to find you properties, go view properties. So you can make it passive, but with property and probably the more traditional way of doing it yourself, there will be a bit of upfront work. Like I said, going out to view properties, you're going to have to, scope areas out, do due diligence, run the numbers, check the locations, especially when property investing now, realistically, you have to be able to invest remotely in terms of, look at different areas where you're potentially not living to be able to get the best returns. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the returns and making as much money from the money that you're putting in as possible. And to do that, you have to be flexible. So, well, how can you invest passively or get passive income from property investing while working a full-time job? Well, look, a bit of work in the beginning in terms of, finding the property or finding a company that's able to assist you to do it. You have to do a bit of paperwork with the solicitors when legally buying the property. You might have to have a few, once you've got the property, you may have to speak to, if you're buying a second-hand freehold property, you might have to speak to a few contractors, get a bit of work done, liaise with your letting agent if they can help with that. If you're buying a new build property, it's more straightforward, you might have a letting agent go and have a look, a bit of a snagging list for you, developers source that out, and then you'll get a tenant in, and you might have to speak to the letting agent when they ring you to say, we've got a few tenants, here's their, profile, here's what their income is, we think this, this would be a decent tenant fit for you, etc. Then the tenant's in, and realistically,
from that moment on, it's a bit more.
As long as you have the correct structure in place.
And it's the right property, right?
Yeah, it has to be fully managed. You can't have passive income if you're trying to manage it yourself. And everyone knows, listening to this podcast, how much I'm a big advocate for utilising letting agents and getting the fully managed service. I work in property, you work in property. We both use fully managed services with letting agents, which we pay the market price for. Reason being, we both work full-time, busy lifestyles, and we want it to be hands-off and passive, so they literally get on with it. You might get a phone call every now and again just to update us on bits, or maybe this needs doing, but they're in short, it is very, very passive for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hit the nail on the head with that. So I think as well, you got to think about it in terms of, we don't just deal with, it might sound like that's something that maybe a brand new investor or someone who doesn't know the market too well or is dipping their toe in as such. But we also have the same process. I mean, we deal with multiple clients that have got portfolios of 5 to 10 plus properties that are just wanting that same service over and over again. So it's not just relaying this to a new investor. We have people that have bought, and if anything, they just do a quick bit of DD, They just, as you said, maybe reference checking what we've said, and then making a decision off of that. But
I think off the bat as well, like in the beginning, you need to have the mindset of you're going to have to sort of delegate jobs out to letting agents, mortgage brokers and stuff, of course, mortgage brokers and stuff like that. But you need people to do the work for you, which will come at a cost, like a letting agent, for example. They'll charge you a percentage of the rental income per month to do that service. But that is the only way it can be passive, because passive means, as we said, little to no work involved. And that is the only way. I think the misconception people have with getting into property investing and it being passive, they think they can do that. They want to save a bit of money, think they can do them jobs themselves alongside a full-time job, save a few quid. It just doesn't work like that. Like the amount of people that say, I'll probably manage it myself. Oh, what, you retired? No. And where's the property? Well, it's up in the northwest and I'm based in London, but I'll be able to manage it myself. No, you won't. You'll have a tenant ring you. You're not going to be able to drive up there and sort bits out.
What happens if there's a leak, any problems?
Anything. And I think,
who are you going to call?
Yeah, Ghostbusters.
Terrible.
Sorry, it's literally because I watched that movie the other night with the kids. Yeah, and you just I fell into that. Sure. Yeah, of course it is. Anyway, back to property. But so I think it's very important you can and how you do it in terms of being a property investor and being one alongside your full-time job is by making it as passive as possible. By doing that, you use the right sort of people and services to do it. And it is quite simple if you get a simple buy-to-let investment. So, realistically, when you're setting it up, it's having a solicitor and a mortgage broker if you're buying with a mortgage. Once that process is done, at that stage, you may have an accountant if you want to structure it in a very specific way and be very diligent about that. You may have an accountant as well that assists at that stage. But once that purchase process is done, it's going to then be relying on the services of a letting agent to then manage the property for you. And then it does become passive. So in a real life example, obviously myself, I've got multiple properties in my portfolio. And, I pretty much, on a day-to-day basis, I definitely don't deal with them. And I would say on a yearly basis...
How many hours would you say in total in a year? You'd probably say you spend maybe delegating a bit of time there. In a whole year, bearing in mind.
In a whole year, I'll be honest, a few phone calls from a letting agent, that's a minute each time. I would say probably an hour or two in a whole year would be the maximum. And as I said, that would be maybe a phone call from the letting agent.
An odd email here and there.
Yeah, odd email here and there, which again doesn't take long to read and respond to. So and that's how passive it is.
The accounts probably at the back end of the year.
Yep, and another thing people are usually quite shocked at is obviously the majority of my portfolio is obviously north of London. Sort of around the Yorkshire way. But I have got some local to where I live. And they'll say, surely you must spend more.
You look after that.
You look after. No, like I spend exactly the same amount of time as the one on my doorstep as I do as the ones a lot further afield, because my whole mindset when getting into property investing is I don't want to be involved. I don't want the headache. I've got a busy life, got a busy lifestyle to run. I haven't got time to do that. I want it to be passive. Touch wood. That's exactly how it is. So another thing I'd recommend is having that mindset when investing in properties. I want it to be passive. I'm running it as a business. It's going to be hands off. I don't know if you've got any clients you could use as an example, like real life examples you can think of that have maybe sort of been able to generate sort of passive income from property.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've had a few people that have gone on, whether they're buying cash or mortgage, that have been overseas buyers. We've got a lot of overseas clients. Yep. I can definitely name a few off the top of my head that have all had similar things. They've maybe got anywhere from 3 to 10 properties now within their portfolio via buying through ourselves, and just benefit from the income on the UK side. Obviously, maybe their funds elsewhere or outside of the UK where they generate maybe their income on a month-to-month basis, but that kind of pile of income is just stacking up month for month. They do, as we do normally, focus on new builds. So the kind of element of, I guess, upkeep is very minimal in terms of the property not needing much work done to it. Any damages to the property. A lot of them have 10 10-year build warranties, as we know.
Yep.
So a lot of the time it's something that realistically the even the letting agent probably won't hear from the tenant the whole time they're there, which is nice to know. And look, they want to stay in properties, brand new properties, they pay higher rents, etc. So well, I know for a fact that a lot of our clients have always been very, very happy with how things are operating, especially with the properties that we deal with, city centre locations. Demand's always high. I said they're benefiting every single month from the rental income, which essentially would be a good margin there for the passive income side of things. And just want to keep topping up that. And obviously, as we know as well, a few of them have used that rental income to then put it forward, as well as maybe pulling out some money out of the property if it's gone up in value, to use as another deposit and go again.
Yep.
So there's a lot of people have mentioned, to be fair.
Another good real life example is you have a client that bought a short let property in a great location, but I think people's misconception of doing a short let is won't be passive, very labour intensive, a lot
very
to do,
hands-on.
But again, another example of having the right people, services and structure in place just shows how you can do it, because they've got very good, we were just getting the figures back for them to get an understanding, how it's letting out, what they're doing at short term, and you said they're like booked up for well in advance, and they're getting great income, and that is somebody who's running it hands off, if I'm correct.
Yeah, exactly that. So as you mentioned, it's something that I think, as you literally just said, about the kind of, everyone thinks it's a lot very labour intensive, short-term let, your long-term let, you stick with the same tenant, it's easy. Look, there is a lot of factors to short-term let, as we know. I think we talked about it in one of our previous episodes about long-term and short-term lets. There can be a lot more involved, but once again, if you get the right company that's going to take care of it as if it's essentially their own, or as a business, then they're going to look after your property. We looked at one of the properties recently, and they've had no less than 80% occupancy rate throughout the year, which, look, as we know, a lot of the time, in some cases, the amount of income can sometimes triple or quadruple what the amount is on a long-term let. So it can be very, very good and essentially passive on that side. But it's obviously, this is all to do with location. Make sure it's a really good location here that's going to have that demand. But as mentioned, that's when it comes down to good management companies. And look, we've worked with a couple now over the years that we know are good, and our clients are always giving great feedback to us. And that's a prime example right there of a property that has had, I think they had another phase of the property a few years ago, and for 3 years running, they've had over 80% occupancy rate there. So that's, once again, not just speaking it, because we know a lot of companies as well, and a lot of places will inflate figures. This is genuine. Look, this is what it is. This is the proof that's there. It's always really, really good to hear that. And as I said, have a company, a trustworthy company that clients can rely on. So it's good to know they've got both options.
We have a previous episode, long-term lets versus short-term lets on the podcast. So if anyone does want to sort of listen to that and find out, the differences between the two and what they both sort of entail, definitely go back and listen to that episode. But when it comes to being passive, what would you say the difference is between, a long-term let versus short-term let?
I would just say, to be honest with you, they both can be fully managed. It's more so on the income side. You can earn sometimes a lot more on the short term let if it's the right property. That's what I would say. Because not all properties are going to do amazingly well, and you're not going to benefit. It has to be in a location where there's demand, there's maybe good transport links nearby, and it doesn't always necessarily mean city centre. Because as we know, we've had a few that are on the outskirts or in areas where you probably would look at it and be like, there's no way that gets traction. I had a lady actually on the phone the other day, and had a phone call with her, and she was like, for example, Halifax, she mentioned, she was like, who on earth would want to stay in Halifax? But yet we know for a fact this management company, when they look at it, they look at all the factors, all the details,
all the data.
Then when you're looking nearby, there's a Travelodge 2 minutes down the road. Why do you think Travelodge are setting up in Halifax? You think they're going to set up with no idea of, let's just set up a hotel there? So there's so many factors that goes into the short term. I would just say, in terms of that, if you get a good company, it's just the difference between earning more money or not. On the passive side, from my personal opinion. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add.
I would say, look, I think the whole message in this episode is, that property investing can be passive, with the right structure, the right services in place. And that comes down to, short-term let versus long-term let, which is more passive. And they're both just the same, like you just mentioned, with the right management company. And for both, short-term rental management companies, if you get a great one, that would be passive, and vice versa. The only thing I might add, and this is just being very, very, very picky and just trying to give some sort of difference, is you could say short-term let, you might have a little bit more to do. And when I say to do, it probably wouldn't be a lot, but there's probably going to be more wear and tear. So maybe
you might have to buy, for example, a furniture pack at the beginning.
A bit more frequently. You may have to be involved in, and I wouldn't say directly involved, but you may get a phone call like, "Hi, been very busy over the past 3 months. There's a bit of wear and tear. We might need to spruce up a bit of the painting and that." And that's as far as it goes. You're not going to be going there painting yourself.
It'd be very minimal,
they're going to have contractors do that for you. I would say, if I'm being very picky, that's the only difference. But yeah, the whole message throughout this episode is it can be passive with the right, as long as you've got the right services and structure in place, that you're not doing everything yourself, which is very easy to do with the right guidance and with the right knowledge. But it's about having that to do that, and doing it correctly as well. Because if you get the wrong type of person looking after the property for you, that can then become not hands off, because you'll have to jump in, step in, do stuff. But yeah, I just want to reiterate one last time, lettings companies, because I just thought in my head, like the one time we went to, in one of our properties, we went to sort the, not me personally, but my friend went to sort the boiler out, and because that's what he does for a living. And he gave the tenant his number, just being friendly, like, and that was it. Bombarded with text messages, phone calls, and that after that, when they should have been contacting the letting. I mean, we're paying a fully managed fee, and in the end, I'd say, look, stop contacting him, because it's nothing to do with him. Deal with the letting agent.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. I said to him, I was like, don't ever give your number to a tenant. But yeah, that's just an example of how, when you do have direct contact and there's no middleman to separate you from the tenant,
it massively helps.
It then becomes very labour intensive in some circumstances. Should you bear that in mind? But yeah, look, in a nutshell, property investing can be passive, and when we say passive, realistic passive, in terms of little to no work is realistic, but with the right setup, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say and just do your own DD and assess which option's going to work best for you in terms of what your strategy is as well. Whether it be the only good thing, I know we talk about it beforehand in the short and the long term lets, but it's the difference potentially between knowing exactly what you're getting on a month to month basis, between maybe knowing that you might get a bit more, but some months maybe a little bit less. So it's balancing out that. Yeah. And also, look, that might be done to seasonal locations as well, seasides, or whereas some areas might be all around, all year round. You've got a good solid occupancy there as well. So all comes down to the property itself.
All right. So to round it up, property investing can be passive when done correctly, and we're two live examples sitting here talking about it, in all fairness. So I hope that's been helpful for the listeners out there. And look, if you do want any guidance, tips, advice, anything like that, let you know where we are. You can reach out to us here at Track Capital. Obviously, you can find us on our socials as well if you want to reach out to either of us personally. I'm Toby Mancuso Property, and
just reach out to the Track Capital.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, we're always, as you said, always open for a phone call, whether that be just some friendly advice, whether you're not quite ready yet, but you're just even in the infancy stages. We always speak to investors as well. So it's not like you're going to feel pressured to buy something right away. We're here to give some genuine friendly advice. And if we can do that and it helps you in some type of way, then brilliant.
Yeah. Right. We'll see you on the next episode.
Take care.
Bye.